Villains. They are the force of nature working against the immovable will of the hero. Villains are what give layers to a story, what make it interesting. Wanting the hero to defeat the villain is what gives a story its tension. But sometimes this script is flipped on its head and we end up rooting for the villains. We sympathize with them and we want them to complete their goals. And more often than not, these villains end up becoming even more popular than the hero of the story. Welcome everyone, this is the Milestone, and today we will be looking at some iconic villains from movies and TV and discussing just why we end up rooting for them. Now, before we begin, I will be going into details for certain characters from movies and shows, and I will be discussing plot details. So, I just wanted to give a quick spoiler warning. Now, I am not here just to talk about great villains or performances by actors that made villains great, but I'm going to go into detail about particular villains that we, the audience, end up rooting for. And there is a certain pattern when we really break it down. Most of these villains fall into three distinct tropes or groups. First off, we have the protagonist. Now, this is the most common way writers make us root for a villain. They simply make the villain the protagonist of the story. When the story itself is told from the character's perspective, we naturally align with them. We see their struggles, understand their motivations, and we essentially follow their journey step by step. The biggest example of this is Breaking Bad. Walter White, Heisenberg, is not a good person at all. He allows someone to die while actively watching. He poisons a child. He psychologically manipulates both Jesse and Skyler and destroys everyone around him. And yet, for a large part of the show, we root for Walter. Why? Because we are inside his story. We see his desperation, his fear of dying without leaving anything behind. A very similar thing happens in The Godfather. Michael Corleone is introduced as the innocent middle son. He is the only one who is sheltered and wants nothing to do with his family's criminal empire. But as the story slowly shifts into his perspective, we watch him descend. And by the time we get to this end of the second film, Michael has lied and manipulated people, emotionally abused his own wife, and even ordered the death of his own brother. But still, we feel sympathy for him. Not because his actions are justified. No. But because we followed his tragic fall. Now, this protagonist trope is used most aggressively in heist stories. In the Ocean's films, Danny Ocean and his crew are criminals. They rob casinos and manipulate people. But we root for them. We enjoy following their journey because the story is framed around their cleverness, their teamwork, and their charm. In Money Heist, the gang storms the Royal Mint and the Royal Bank, takes hostages, and threatens mass murder if things go wrong. Characters like Berlin and Tokyo are clearly dangerous, fully willing to kill innocent people for the job. And through the course of the show, they do end up killing people. And yet, we still want them to succeed. And we want them to get out of the situation alive. Why? Because they are the protagonists. We are on their side of the conflict. We say their thoughts and we understand their struggles. The same logic applies to serial killer protagonists like Joe Goldberg or Dexter Morgan. They murder people over the smallest inconveniences. But because we're locked into their internal monologues, listening to their justifications and rationalizations, they begin to feel endearing. The second trope that such villains fall into is the motive. Now, the villain doesn't always have to be the protagonist for us to understand them, to root for them. It can also be because their reasons actually make sense. Their methods may be horrific, their actions might be completely unforgivable, but at the core of it, what they're working towards, what their motives are, isn't wrong. The clearest example of this is Magneto. Eric Lensch's entire ideology revolves around one single thing: the survival of mutant kind. In the world of X-Men, mutants are feared, hunted, and treated as threats simply because they exist. While Professor Charles Xavier believes in peaceful coexistence, Eric does not because he has seen what humanity is capable of. As a child, he survived Nazi concentration camps. He knows what happens when a group is labeled as dangerous or other. His primary goal is the preservation of his kind, and he's willing to go to any lengths to achieve it. And guess what? More often than not, the world proves him right. A similar idea exists with Eric Killmonger in Black Panther. Killmonger's anger is completely based around the fact that Wakanda, a nation with unimaginable power, chose isolation while people like him were oppressed all around the world. His goal isn't to take over Wakanda simply for the sake of power. He wants to help his people rise up and fight back against their oppressors.
They'll arm oppressed people all over the world so they can finally rise up and kill those in power.
He wants retribution. He wants justice, even if that vision is deeply flawed. Thanos wants to erase half the universe using the Infinity Stones. Not because he's a genocidal maniac, but because he believes he's restoring balance to the universe. He has seen firsthand how overpopulation leads to dwindling resources and the collapse of natural order. In his mind, wiping out half the universe will allow the other half to live sufficient lives. Sometimes this trope even appears in much lighter stories. In Phineas and Ferb, Dr. Doofenshmirtz is constantly building ridiculous senators to carry out supposedly evil plans. But beneath the cartoon villainy, his motivation is painfully simple. He just wants to be a good father. Having grown up without love or validation, all Doofenshmirtz wants is to be there for his daughter Vanessa. And even his arch nemesis, Perry the Platypus, recognizes this, which is why he often helps him instead of stopping him. In Blade Runner, Roy Batty does not want power or domination. He simply does not want to die. He even saves the main protagonist in the end, because his simple goal is to live. Even someone like Sher Khan from the Jungle Book fits into this pattern. He doesn't hate Mowgli out of cruelty, he fears what humans represent. He has seen villagers burn down forests and he understands the destruction that fire can cause. So his distrust of a human child growing up among animals isn't an irrational fear. None of these characters chose the right way to act, yes, but what they want, safety, justice, protection, it's understandable. And now we come to the third subgroup, the past. Sometimes a villain is neither a protagonist, nor do they have the right reasons for their actions. They are simply the product of tragic circumstances. One of the most famous examples is Anakin Skywalker. Anakin begins the story as a gifted Jedi. He is hopeful, he is compassionate, yet he is deeply afraid of loss. And then the tragedies start hitting him one by one. He is taken away from his mother at a young age, discouraged from forming attachments. Then his apprentice leaves him. The Jedi don't trust him fully because of his immense power. He sees his mother die in front of his own eyes, but he cannot do anything, and he is slowly disillusioned by the Jedi Order. When he turns to the dark side, it isn't out of hunger for power. No. Anakin is just trying to save the one person he loves the most. So when he ultimately turns into Darth Vader, we feel sorry for him. Prince Zuko was mistreated by his father as a child and even physically scarred, leaving him with a burning desire to prove himself by capturing the Avatar. He is simply trying to prove his worth to a father who never loved him and instead saw his sister more capable than he was. A similar tragedy exists with Tai Lung. Tai Lung was raised by Master Shifu, trained from childhood and led to believe he was destined to become the Dragon Warrior. Tai Lung's entire identity was built around that promise. When Master Oogway rejected him and Shifu did nothing to stop it, Tai Lung doesn't just lose a title. He lost his purpose in life. He felt betrayed, and that's what caused him to lash out. Sometimes, even the worst of monsters were just a product of their terrible past. Klaus Michelson, growing up, was always hated and abused by Michael, his father, for being an illegitimate child. Later on, his mother abandoned him after killing his birth father and suppressing his werewolf gene. Klaus could never become who he truly was. All of this created in Klaus a deep-seated insecurity. He feared that no one would ever love him, that he was always destined to be alone. And he began to seek power, so he could get people to fear him instead. And it turned him into the power-hungry psychopath we see in the Vampire Diaries and the originals. It was all because of the deep-seated trauma from his childhood. One of the most tragic stories of all lies with Gollum from The Lord of the Rings. He was once just a simple hobbit, but his life is completely destroyed by the One Ring. Its corruption twists his mind, fractures his identity, and drives him to even murder his own kin, all so he can get the ring. Frodo sympathizes with Gollum not because he's innocent, but because he sees what the ring can do. Gollum for him isn't just a villain, he is a warning. And that's what makes us, the audience, sympathize with him. He is a living example of what prolonged corruption looks like. None of these characters are excused by their past, but their backstories transform them into monsters, into tragedies. And that is what ultimately makes us sympathize with them. Now, obviously, there is yet another kind of villain that I haven't talked about. The villains were so well written, so well performed by the actors, that they are just magnetic to watch on screen. We latch onto them because we enjoy watching those characters on screen. I'm talking about Heath Ledger's Joker. I'm talking about Hans Landa. I'm talking about Lord Voldemort. But today, we are only talking about rootable villains. So that is a video for another day. Do tell me your thoughts regarding my classifications. Obviously, I haven't specified all villains that fall into these groups. So let me know who your favorite villains are from movies and TV. And if you liked the video, do support the channel by performing the 3 essential steps: like, share, and subscribe. And keep a watch out for the next video.